Welcome to Nerds on Tap, where we get nerdy for an hour with business, entrepreneurial stories, and tech, where tech is a central focus of all our conversations. Today, we invite Andrew Borovsky into our studio. Andrew is a veteran product designer and serial entrepreneur with a track record of building impactful products. He has held executive leadership roles at Cash App, Cadre, and Square, and co-founded 80/20, which was acquired by Square. Before that, Andrew was a principal designer at Apple and Adobe. He has launched rent.app, and he is CEO and founder of Visible, found at visible.xyz, where he and his team are helping to build a financial network for real estate. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So today we're going to cover Andrew's entrepreneurial journey and get nerdy about what he's developed. We'll talk about the future of tech and then go into our rapid fire round. As always, Nerds on Tap is brought to you by Digital Boardwalk that I founded in 2009, providing enterprise-grade managed IT and cybersecurity services to businesses up to 500 seats across the United States. And if you are a prior listener, you know we always sample a flight of beer during the show, but since this one is remote, I'll be drinking a mug. Andrew, what do you have today? What are you drinking?
I got the best beer this hotel had to offer. So I actually never had it. This Estrella Cerveza.
All right.
Not the Spanish Estrella. It's the Mexican Estrella.
Okay, cool. And Edge, what'd you pour in my mug? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Nerds on Tap. I'm your host, Tim Shute, and I couldn't be more excited to embark on this nerdy adventure with all of you. So grab your favorite brew, because things are about to get exciting.
3, 2, 1, go!
All right, so today we have Samuel Adams White Ale. It's a Belgian-inspired wheat beer brewed with a unique blend of 10 exotic spices, including orange peel, coriander, and vanilla, giving it a complex yet smooth flavor. The beer features a crisp, malty finish from a mix of pale barley, wheat, and Munich malt, and is coarse filtered for a white, hazy appearance.
Awesome. Yeah, I've already downed half of it while I was sitting in the waiting room as well, Andrew. So are you ready to
I'm missing out.
You ready to kick
this
nerdy adventure off?
Let's go.
All right. So let's start by talking, before we get into current developments and what you've been working on, let's talk about your early career. Tell me what inspired you to become an entrepreneur.
I think I have maybe not super satisfying, but kind of I think very common answer, which is just at some point, you're building things for other people, and then eventually you realize that A, you could do it better, and B, that there's some things out there you want to see out there in the world that if they were to appear, you have to kind of make them. So yeah. I wanted to build stuff I wanted to see in the world.
Yeah, that's kind of looking back into the 90s when I first started. I remember, getting frustrated by all the mandates and being kind of tied into a box. And I remember someone telling me one day, just go start your own thing, get out there, be your own destiny, right? So that's part of it. And so talking about building things, Visible and Rent app. Tell me about that. What inspired you to start that? And then let's talk about what sets it apart in the market. What makes it different?
Happy to talk about this all day long. So my background, last sort of, I'd say 12 years or so, right, is at the intersection of payments and real estate. So I spent, a bunch of time at Square and then a bunch of time at Cadre, which is Square, I think, is a payments company most people know for the Square credit card reader. We gave the opportunity to, a lot of small businesses that were previously only able to accept cash. We were able to give them the ability to take credit cards. And so I got to learn all about payments, all about card networks, all about the banking system in the United States. I went deeper down this kind of rabbit hole by joining Cadre, which is basically a tech-enabled real estate private equity firm. And a lot of people don't know that real estate's the biggest asset class in the world, bigger than the stock market and the bond market combined. And so real estate, from an economic standpoint, just fascinating. It's huge, massive asset class that's kind of mostly opaque, like super privately owned. You don't really get, everyone loves trading stocks, but like you actually can't trade most of real estate. So it's really fundamental to the world economy. And that's actually why I wanted to kind of go deeper down that rabbit hole, understand what private equity means, what real estate private equity means. I think I did it in the best way possible, which is to do it in New York with, guys that work for these giants like Blackstone and BlackRock and all the other B companies. And so basically 12 years of that. And, when you come out of, I'm a technologist kind of by heart, I guess, by trade. And, so, real estate's really interesting. It really hasn't changed in like 50 years. We have a lot of stuff. I mean, people look at Zillow and they go, oh, wow, like real estate's very digital. And like Zillow is really just a database, right, of available properties. Fundamentally, though, like if you think about real estate transactions, think about buying, selling, borrowing against your home, investing in real estate, these are really tedious transactions. And no one likes doing these things, right? It's usually slow, it's very expensive, it's very complicated. And so when I started the company 2 years ago, again, looking at payments and real estate that I love, the mandate of the company is like, how do we make real estate transactions faster, cheaper, and less complex? And within sort of this 2-year period, we built a bunch of technology, but we have to pick, where do we start? Which one of these transaction types can we make better first? And we looked at rent. And that's another, again, rabbit hole I went down. I didn't know much about rent before I started. But, you look at real estate in the United States, one of the best, pieces of real estate in the world, effectively, right? Like a global safe haven. And a third of all real estate in the United States is for rent. It's massive, right? 43 million units. And for a lot of Americans, actually a source of income. But when you look at this individual ownership of real estate and you look at how rent is collected and paid, it's staggering that cash is king. Most rent is still being collected in cash. Checks and money orders are actually close second. And so digital payments, that we've all become accustomed to, everyone uses Cash App and Venmo. They haven't really caught up to real estate and haven't really caught up to rent. Most people don't pay rent using digital payment methods. So we built Rentapp to address this. We think that Rentapp is the best way to pay and collect rent. And you could think of it as like a hyper vertically integrated Zelle, right? Which is that, it's very easy to send money and receive money, just an email and phone number are required. It's completely free. But where it starts to set itself apart is it's very high limits, right? Zelle, a lot of the times you can't pay rent in one payment. You have those limits, right? You have to pay like a little bit of your rent every month.
Interesting.
And so we have very high limits, so up to $20,000 per transaction. Support for it seems basic, but it's not there in these apps. Autopay, you can pay rent, set it and forget it, right? Every first of the month, we move money from you to your landlord directly. And then the one feature that we really love is free credit building. So if you pay rent using Rentapp, it's like you're paying a mortgage. So we will, with your permission, report this to the credit bureaus, all three, and then you'll get credit for it. And you're starting to kind of build that, sort of financial well-being, early in your 20s, whereas, most people don't have access to that until like in their early 30s, right? When you start taking out loans. So, yeah, that's in a nutshell. I know that was a lot, but we're zooming in here.
So how are you getting it out there? Who is your target? Is it the renter or is it the landlord? Are you going through the landlords? Are you getting it out that way? What are you doing?
It's a little bit of both. We're talking to both. So, most of the time, if you want to switch to digital payments in the real estate space, you have, what's called property management software. And it tends to be this suite of tools that's like akin to Salesforce, not a pleasant experience generally for most homeowners. And, again, when you go back to most homes in the United States are owned by individuals, and most of the landlords in the United States own just 2 or 3 properties. It's like, are you really going to deal with onboarding onto Salesforce, right? Just to take payments for 3 properties. So people just kind of avoid it altogether. And so in our case, what we've done is actually made it easy for the renter to loop in their landlord. So because we support any bank in the US and any address in the US and no prior integration is required, a renter can actually by themselves go to the App Store, download Rentapp, send a payment securely through the app to their landlord. Their landlord basically gets a notification via text or email and says, hey, Andrew's trying to pay you rent for this address. You know, obviously they're expecting this because that's your tenant. And all they have to do is just type in the routing and account number to accept that payment. They don't have to download anything. They don't have to set anything up. So really like unparalleled, level of low friction, right? Like the landlord doesn't have to do anything, just link a bank account once. All future payments go to the same place. Any other tenant sends you money to the same email address or phone number, just goes to your bank account. So very, very easy. And so we have this kind of marketing campaign that's really out there going after renters for the first time. No property management software out there pitches renters. So they're like, hey, start building credit with Rentapp. And then they onboard the landlords. And what we find is 95% of all landlords that receive a Rentapp payment are happy to do it. They accept it and they onboard all their other tenants. It's a little bit of a kind of an upside down approach to distribution, but it works.
So that's interesting. I have rental properties. I have several rental properties, vacation properties and things like that. And I use a property management company because they're in other.
What do you use?
They're in other. Well, they're local to the area. So
I see. Gotcha. I'm curious about what the service is that they.
Well, they take 30%. And that's what I want to.
Okay.
Well, that's what I want to address here, because you've got all these different apps that get you, where you can self-manage or co-host these properties. And I'm not a rental guru or a landlord guru. I just own homes that I like to visit that I rent out. And
you're our customer.
Well, that's why I'm glad you're on the show. So I guess the reason I say this is because they do a lot for me. They'll run up to the property, check on things for me. They'll let me know if something's not working. They manage the housekeeping. They manage the landscaping. They manage all these things. But I get billed for all of them, of course, on my monthly sheet. I manage all my numbers just inside of a QuickBooks file. You mentioned, so this brings up a couple questions. How do the fees work with your product? And, well, let's start there. Let's start with that question.
Sure.
I'm gonna let you talk and then I'll chime in.
Yeah. I mean, I'll qualify first of all that, we don't go out there like field maintenance requests. We're very much a payments layer. So trying to be purposely super kind of fade into the background. We'll take care of the money movements. You can, service the property whichever way you want. And so just a disclaimer there, but the product is completely free. And the reason for it is because when we started building this, we knew that we're competing with checks and cash. And a lot of the times people don't switch to digital. And again, I told you 80% of the payments that individuals take in this space are not digital. It's because of fees on both sides, right? It's one of you is paying the fees. So we knew we had to architect the product in such a way where we could give it away for free. And we do. And so the logical question is, how do you make money? We think that the right approach here is to charge for additional features. So Rentapp is, virtually no limits across the board, totally free. You can manage as many properties you want for both parties. We introduced actually our first paid product today, and it's a value add product. It's actually funny we're talking today because we just launched it.
Awesome.
And it's actually, do you guys hear that? Yeah. Florida, just random thunderstorms.
Wow. Fun.
But yeah, so the product's called Split Pay, and basically it allows a tenant with no involvement from the landlord to split their rent payment into two. So rather than, you get paid twice a month, but rent is due on the first, and people hate that balloon payment. Mm-hmm. It's super stressful. You got to kind of budget around it. A lot of the times, maybe you don't pick up a shift and then you can't pay on time and then you incur a late fee. So what we do is for a small fee, it's $20. You can pay rent in two payments, half your rent on the first, half your rent on the 15th. Your landlord gets paid on time, the full sum right off the bat. They don't know any better. and that's a paid feature. And so just by running split pay as an option with a percentage of our customers, tenants in this case, using it, it keeps the entire service free. And that's how we architected it from the ground up.
Wow, that's amazing. So you guys are going to launch.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
you'll have new products rolling out, and you'll have upgrades and things that people can buy within the platform.
That's
right? Beautiful.
Yeah.
So
and my previous product, just to really quickly, it's a common thing. Like the thing I worked on rentapp, before rentapp, I worked on Cash App, which is, well-known product. Yeah. Almost 60 million customers in the US use it. And, Cash App is free. It provides fantastic value for free. And then what they do is if you're trading Bitcoin, if you're trading stocks, that's where you start to see some transaction fees come in. And, I think that's the right model, like provide, massive utility, baseline utility for free, get people to use the product. And then if they want more advanced features, you charge for them. And there's no gotchas, there's no weird stuff. You're not selling anyone's data. There's no weird stuff like you're the product,
Awesome. Yeah. Very similar to, any sort of, like we're built on the backbone of managed IT at Digital Boardwalk, and we roll out new products. Shoot, this year alone, we've rolled out 3 or 4 new products, and everything's built on a recurring basis. So it's predictable for the customer, predictable for us. But when we're rolling out these new products, there has to be a need for it. So I guess my question is, when you told me before, renters are your initial client base, and you're reaching out to renters. Are you expanding on that?
Yeah. What we see is, a really nice trend, which is essentially, we run an Instagram ad about building credit or being able to split your rent in two. And the renter hears about us this way. They download the app. It's relatively cheap to run, Instagram ads compared to like trying to, when you're selling SaaS software, it's very expensive to run ads, that are targeting SaaS customers. Whereas 80% of 25-year-olds in the US rent. So basically, if somebody's engaging with Instagram, they probably are renting. So very easy to kind of target folks. And we're basically saying, look, there's some great features. They're completely free. So the renter downloads the app. They send the payment to their landlord. The landlord is, again, I stand by the product. It's a very elegant user experience. It's completely free with no gotchas. So the landlord likes it. I mean, landlords want to go to digital payments. A renter makes 1 payment a month. Most landlords have to collect five of them, right? So, they're only too happy to discover us. And so what happens is the renter introduces us to the landlord, and then the landlord introduces us to the rest of the renters. So there's some really nice kind of network effects there. But we're definitely not stopping there. I mean, we're doing targeted outreach to owners. And to that end, we basically have our support team, support/sales team. We call and email people that we know are kind of small owners, folks such as yourself, that just have a couple of properties and it's a bit of a hassle for you, or maybe you're paying a lot of fees. And we just call them. And I get on a call with people myself, and I do demos because we demo super well. Our product, takes like 30 seconds to send a rent payment. So I just do a demo to all these landlords, and one person at a time, we're bringing people on board. I love this space. I love when you get to deal not with, managers at large companies, right, that don't really care one way or another. You're like, they get harassed with sales calls all day long, and like, there's all
it's a financial transaction,
everyone's just not very invested, right? Whereas I get to call and talk to people that own this real estate. For them, it's like their life's work. It's a very rewarding space to be in. I love this small business space, because you just meet some, incredible characters.
But taking your background, I mean, real estate, cash digital transactions, and forming, I guess, taking all that tech and putting it together. That's the space you've lived in for quite a while, right?
Yeah. Especially the long tail, long tail of individual owners or individual small business owners. It's just a very, it's where technology shines, right? Like it's easy to build. I mean, everything's hard, but I think it's relatively easy to build a piece of software and go try and sell it to somebody that has whatever, let's say 10,000 employees that are going to be forced to use it, right? Like enterprise SaaS sales is kind of just you identify the elephants and you go after them. And as a result, what you have is it's very crowded space. Everyone's out there, basically it's a race to the bottom on fees. Whereas, the amazing thing about America, right, is that there's so much small business ownership and so much real estate ownership, asset ownership by these individuals, right? This is like the kind of like the backbone of the country. And yet no one's really playing in the space because people don't like it when you have to acquire customers one at a time. And I love it. And I think this is where technology really shines because you can put something out there, again, through Instagram, through YouTube, and you actually access like millions of these customers that are so happy you built something for them,
Yeah. So before I get into my other questioning, I want to ask you a question. I was on the site, I was reading a little bit about it, and the way so you're using blockchaining or you're using technology to stack on top of the titling I'm switching gears here. I'm going from rent app to visible. Tell me, tell me about it. Tell me about that product before we actually kind of gear back into the early stages of development for both of these companies.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so let's put a little Chinese wall between rentapp and visible because they're really,
two separate.
They're two different missions, I would say. And so rentapp is very much built on the traditional fintech rails, which is effectively the ACH network, right? This is how banks talk to each other. And so we move money in a very kind of boring, old, but highly reliable way, right? ACH. But as I mentioned, when we started the company 2 years ago, we also had our sights set on, okay, like, what's the big problem we're trying to solve? Like, think of rentapp as being almost like a 3-year vision, right? But then it fits into being kind of a beachhead for like more of a 10-year vision. And the 10-year vision is just to make real estate ownership, again, fast, low cost and very easy, right? Which it isn't today,
Simple.
right? To buy a house still takes you 30 days. It's not clear why. To buy a house, you're still paying, you're going to end up paying like 2 to 3% in transaction fees to buy a home, which by the way is massive, right? On like, let's say $500,000, right? Like that's incredible. And you know what I'm talking about. You go to buy a house, you're like, okay, I bought a house, it's $500K. And then you show up on that last day, it's closing, and you're signing all these forms. There's like 8 people in the room that you've never met.
Doc
and
fees.
You were like,
I remember the first house I bought.
Fees. Yeah. Yeah.
The first house I bought a long time ago. I remember I was a young guy and I was going, what is this? And I was so frustrated when I left that room.
Yeah, totally. And it's try and ask people like 2 days before closing, what are my fees going to be? And they're like, oh, we'll figure it out that day. It's like a big surprise. Like how much money did you set aside for the completely random number we're going to throw at you? And it is, it goes back. It's a consequence. Look, everyone's doing their job. It's a consequence of the fact that the real estate ownership in the US is it really like the way we record transactions, which is, just to get geeky for a second, right? It's you do it through your county. There's 3,600 counties in the US, right? Your records are not kept at municipal level or even state level or federal level. They're kept at county level. Miami-Dade includes Miami and Dade counties, right? So we'd actually like the county is bigger than the city of Miami. In New York, there are multiple counties because New York is so big. Like, the division lines are super weird, right? Some counties are fully digital. Others are fully analog. They have different methods for how you actually submit the data to them. They have different timelines. By the way, you think digital is fast. New York is mostly digital. The delay in recording transactions in New York, last I checked, was somewhere around 40 days. And then you have rural counties that are completely analog, where they'll record a transaction same day. So it's complete chaos, right? And the heart of being able to transact in real estate is to be able to verify that the person you're buying a house from really owns it. And when you buy it, that now that ownership record's been updated and now you own it. And because this system is so crazy, and it's really the best comparison is like a mainframe computer from like the 50s, maybe the 40s, right? We're talking about like we're reading paper cards here, right? That's effectively what you're interfacing with. All problems kind of stem from it, because when you're talking about the number of days it takes to close, it's largely due to the number of days it takes to update those records. And by the way, the biggest fee you're going to pay is going to be title insurance. Why is there title insurance? Title insurance exists because there's a gap between the last reading we took of the records and our ability to update them. And in this couple of days, it could be minutes, right? Could be 40 days, like in New York. Things can happen where new information comes up and all of a sudden the title is potential. Now, they rarely happen, which is why it's such a good business. But when you're being sold title insurance, it's to prevent bad things from happening in the time it takes for this mainframe computer to make a change to a database, right? I think now that I've explained it this way, you can kind of understand, right? Like it is insane, right? This is the number one real estate market on planet Earth, and this is how it works, right? So the reason I'm saying all this is that there is a technology change, right? We need to update the technology that we use to record ownership, right? It's like a data. I mean, I think most of your listeners are familiar with databases,
and
right?
It needs to cross county and state lines.
It just needs to be a central database that you can read and write from in real time.
Yeah.
And when we started building Visible, one of the things that we were curious about is, can the blockchain actually be that database of the future? And look, I'm a technical guy. I'm not here to pitch you crypto coins. I'm talking about blockchain purely as a database technology. Mm-hmm. There's some really nice advantages of it. It's interoperable and it is programmable, right? So hypothetically speaking, right, you could, if and this, we're talking 10 years out. If the federal government created a centralized database or a decentralized database of real estate records of all ownership in the United States, it would make everything so much faster, so much cheaper, and so much less complex. Because if you update records in real time, you don't need title insurance. You don't need title searches. I mean, that's at least $100, maybe $1,000 in some cases. And here's what's really interesting. You can actually open up the U.S. real estate market to global capital flows. So right now, if you're somebody from Europe and you're trying to buy real estate or just invest in real estate in the United States, there's a Chinese wall, no pun intended, where you really can't access this data and you need lawyers to do it, et cetera. And theoretically speaking, if there was, you could, and I'm not here to pitch you on decentralized or centralized. If there was any kind of database, right, that was acceptable, that you can write APIs on top of, that you could do interesting things with, we could really unlock a lot of liquidity in this amazing space that we're in. And again, at the end of the day, what it means is you're empowering the little guy. The people that have the most leverage, the people that are making all the money in real estate, are the people with the most capital. Because what they do is they abstract away the counties and they use large sums of capital to buy buildings instantly at a really good price, and they sort out the title issues later. And I'm talking about all the private, the Brookfields, the Blackstones, and the BlackRocks of the world. The reason they're so successful in real estate is they abstract away the complexity of the U.S. real estate market, whereas guys like you and me, we can't do it. We don't have that luxury. We have to buy title insurance because if something goes wrong with that one transaction, this is our life savings. So, anyways, Visible is sort of we're building some tech there. That's kind of interesting. It's sort of like a technical proof of concept at this stage, but it's meant to address some of these issues.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow.
It's a bit of a rant, but this is such a rat hole.
I love it, and I love the thunder in the background.
Yeah.
We're both in Florida, ladies and gentlemen.
Hopefully it adds a little bit of drama to what I'm saying.
It did, right? When you said your punchline, it was like, rah.
The whole screen turns pink.
There you go. Yeah, it does, actually. Your background
You got a little bit of plastic.
Wow. So, everything's moving in that direction. I don't know. I used to be in the military and everything's backwards. I mean, all the systems there are just so old school. coming out back into the civilian world, being able to develop things and watching things grow. And I've watched the evolution. Shoot, I watched the evolution of the PC. I'm that old, you know. I remember getting my first PC in the early 80s when no one had one. And
Which branch did you serve in?
I was in the Navy.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, I'm asking. Just my daughter is 17, and she's looking to. She's applying to all the military schools. We're actually gonna go to Annapolis to go check it out, do a tour probably later next month.
So I was in the Navy. I spent time serving on an Air Force base in the Navy, and I thought
Okay.
I thought
we're
I
gonna
was
go
at
to Denver too.
I thought I was at a resort. So she may want to look Air Force, but
Okay,
go Navy.
we're doing all three. Yeah.
I was a tech in the Navy. So let's kind of pull back a little bit. Let's talk about I love stories about the early days. I've got tons of them, but this is about you today. I know when I created my first businesses over the years, I learned from all the mistakes I made, right? And then I would make sure I never replicated those mistakes. Tell me about lessons you've learned from previous ventures, both successes and failures, and how they shaped your approach to building these new applications. That's a good question.
Fantastic question. No, of course. Yeah. I mean, probably a day doesn't go by that I don't think about this. Look, I mean, I think, all of us, we enter the business world, right? Unfortunately, you can't learn business in school, right? It's just something that you have to try. Whoa. Sorry about that. It's something you have to try. I was sitting on a patio. I thought I'd be safe, but I should have been probably inside.
Yeah, I wouldn't be out there.
But yeah, so look, I think our first business venture is always maybe skewed by our biases, right? From wherever it is we come from, right? So my background is I went to school for product design. Was a designer by trade. I knew how to create, beautiful experiences, delightful experiences. I spent, the first 10 years of my career, I was first at Adobe and then I was at Apple. And, in a very narrow role, like my goal was just to build the user experience. And what happens in those situations is you believe that that's all that matters. The thing you're working on is the most important thing, right? And very quickly I learned, right, that there are some great companies out there, for example, just in the design world, right? There's companies out there with amazing user experiences that failed as businesses, right? And by the way, we see this all the time.
Yeah.
And we have companies that have terrible user experiences that then succeed, right? So it's just one piece of the puzzle. I think, right off the bat, I mean, if you go into business, you have to understand all of the verticals, right, that come together to create a beautiful product. A beautiful product is user experience, yes, but it's also the technology. It's always also the sales team. It's the support team, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the whole shebang. By the way, Tony Fadell, the guy that famously invented the iPod, Apple acquired his company.
Mm-hmm.
Built worked on the original iPhone, built a Nest thermostat product, sold it to Google. He has a book called Build. I'm not sure if you guys have come across it. It came out 3 years ago, and a lot of what I'm saying, honestly, I'm just kind of quoting him because he just articulates it so well. Having built products where the whole widget is just all these different verticals. I think that was something that is just definitely a lesson, right? Is you gotta, if you're a designer, you gotta get into engineering and sales and support. If you are an engineer, you gotta get in the heads of design, sales, and support.
Yeah.
Like you have to understand all that. And yeah, you can't win just by being, siloed in one of those verticals.
You've always, a lot of people, I think when they go into business, they go in because they have a passion for building something, right? But they don't know how to run a business or they don't see the importance of sales or marketing. Keeping your pipeline stacked full is one of the most important things you can do in a business because, if you have attrition and you don't have a pipeline, you don't have any money coming in. And then marketing. So this question isn't on my list, but I want to ask you because marketing is one of my favorite hats to wear. Of all the hats I've worn over the years running businesses, marketing is the most fun for me. What is your favorite hat?
Marketing hack?
No, what's your favorite hat in business?
Oh, sorry,
Across the
hat. I thought you said
entire spectrum. Hat. Sorry, hat.
Yes. So first of all, sales and marketing is unbelievably important. It's my least favorite hat as like a technologist. And so I have to force myself every morning, to kind of get into that and really I have to force myself to love marketing, because it doesn't matter what you build if you can't market it, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to say that. But I think the outside of design, I really love support. I mentioned support, customer support, because it's just, if you're on the front lines with your customer, at the end of the day, right, your marketing, your engineering, your design, everything you do is actually informed by the customer, and the person closest to the customer is your support team. And I'm not going to name names, but there are some unbelievable leaders in technology today, like top 10 technology companies, top 10 startups right now in Silicon Valley are led by people who got their start in the support team. And I'm talking like found an ad on Craigslist for a low-level support job for for like an Uber. And they, by working in support, right, answering phones for 1 year at a company, they had all the insights that they needed to then shoot up within the ladder of that company, because they were so informed by what the customer needs, what the pain points are. They became the best engineers, the best product managers, and eventually a lot of these folks, I'm talking about, entered kind of a C-suite right out of support. I actually think that's kind of a life hack for a lot of folks. Like, don't think that customer support is like, oh, it's a shitty job that, if nothing else is out there, I'll join support. The back door
There's
to the
an art
C-suite at the best companies in the world is support.
There is an art to customer support, an art to it. I mean, that
absolutely, hands
down, an art to it. So one of my least favorite hats growing businesses over the years was always HR. Now, but that was only because I wasn't good at it. Now, we send people to leadership classes. We grow leaders inside of our company. And I noticed, I went on your website, and you have a team around you. First, I want to know, well, I know when we started, it was tough to maintain a strong company culture in our company, especially in those early years. First of all, tell me how you met the folks briefly. Tell me how you met the folks. Were they friends, colleagues, and how you balance growth with maintaining a strong culture within the company?
Yeah, I'll be honest. This is one of the best podcasts I've ever been on, because you answer you ask super fun questions that I love to talk about.
Good. Well, we're not even into the fun questions yet. Those are coming in a minute.
Okay, cool. So. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. So, I like to think, I love people. I invest a lot in my relationships with people. I'm very direct and vulnerable and honest with people. And the reason for that is because, I've always had this strategy, and that strategy has always paid off, which is that, you invest in relationships and you have no idea the dividends that this is going to, pay you, decades later. And I found this to be incredibly true, which is to say, when I work with somebody at a company, my favorite thing to say is like, we're going to work together as though we're going to work together at the next 3 companies, right? I think that's really important. A lot of people are kind of like, oh, this is my work group at this company, and I'm going to burn all those bridges. I'm going to move on to a new company, and I'm going to create new friends. And it's like, no, that doesn't work. So everyone on my current team I've worked with before. I knew it. Two of my co-founders I met when I was 21 at my first job. We worked together, in the same small room. We're all in our early 20s. Worked at Adobe, worked at Apple at different times, and then got together. I think I met them. I was 21, and then I was 28 when I said, "Hey, let's build a company together." We built that company, grew it, sold it, then went our separate ways, did some other stuff for a bit, and then when I wanted to build a new company, I'm like, guys, let's do this again. And then my other co-founders are, again, folks that I work with at Cadre. And when I wanted to build this company, I'm like, hey, you two are like the best people I've ever worked with in your verticals. Like, come on board. So, you're always quote unquote building a team, right? And yeah, in fact, from an age perspective, it's interesting. I'm in my 40s. I love being in my 40s because I have such a bench, right? Like if I'm starting anything, I just now have, 25 years worth of incredible people that I could just stack in every, which way. And they're happy to work with me because I've maintained those relationships. And that's at the center of it. So I always encourage everyone to just like invest in your relationships, the good and the bad, don't burn bridges, and think of the people that you meet and the people that you work with as people that you might potentially work 20, 30, 40 years from now. Right.
Exactly.
So that's the team right now. Yes, it's great because I end up basically the team I have right now is the best team I've ever worked with, as it should be. No surprises. It helps on the culture side because, culture is, first of all, it's a loaded word these days. There's always people talking about you're not supposed to have culture. Yeah, it was like at the height of the corporate, woke madness that we went through, during COVID. That became like a toxic word. I'm less radical, I guess, in that sense. But I think what people mean by culture is just like when you're working with random folks, right? And you don't know who you're going to hire. You're hiring new people, young people. Culture is just a common language that you can have that makes it easier to onboard people and have people feel comfortable in your team very quickly. So it's entirely a good thing. It's just a fabric of a company, right? That makes it easy to onboard new people.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're working with people for a long time, one of the benefits you have is you don't have to invest a lot in the culture because it's kind of a given. So I am very fortunate where, we finish each other's sentences. We have a very strong executive team. And so culture for us right now is really, so we're all in our 40s. And our engineering team, which is bulk of the company, is all in their 20s. And so now we're like kind of looking back at what it was like to be in our 20s, things that we thought were great and like made us work better together. And we're trying to infuse that into this kind of new generation. And, it's lightweight. It's like, it's about being, to us, it's like being direct. Again, I said this before, honest, direct, vulnerable, not to be afraid to be,
going from mentee to mentor, open. Making that transition over the years.
It's not complicated. It doesn't have to be contrived. It's like most people just want to talk to somebody who will listen, and who will give them honest feedback. Who has a sense of humor, that's all people kind of want. You don't need to like invent, I think, beer pong tournaments. By the way, I love beer pong tournaments. I'm just saying you don't have to. No,
that's anti-productive in my experience. It's funny, one word I didn't hear you say. Now, this is a word I kind of live by in my, my leadership stance is transparency. I think a lot of my colleagues, they like the fact that I'm 100% transparent. I want everybody in the company to have a voice, and I'm sure you do too. I think that's important because there's power in numbers. We don't know it all, so hire people that are smarter than you. And in your case, you're hiring these younger folks that are on the latest, on the edge of the latest trends. You guys are mentoring them and instilling leadership qualities in them, to help them help you build this empire. And that's, transparency. Someone taught me that once. They said, be transparent. Make sure everybody has a voice, but make sure they know what you're thinking. And that's worked for me. I've got folks that have been with me going on 20 years now and been working alongside me. So, I knew that. Agree
more. And that's what I meant by honesty. There should be no reason for you to dress your words up, right? People, if there's things you're struggling with, and that ties into vulnerability. There's things you're struggling with on a personal level as a CEO, like no reason not to share that. People appreciate that. People can relate to that. Everyone struggles with something. I'm more technical. It's interesting. Well, this is kind of me throwing it back to you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I do find as you get bigger, right? So transparency and directness sort of is easier to manage. Let's put it this way. When you're sort of less than 50 people,
Yeah.
when you get to that sort of 1,000-person mark, when you're a couple of hundred people, frankly, you need to there's probably a few caveats there. Square, I worked for Jack Dorsey, and Jack Dorsey built Square on this culture of transparency or radical transparency. And you did see, it was awesome when we were 200 people. When Square became like 4,000 people, there was such thing as too much transparency. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it depends on where you're at in the scale of the business too.
Totally. Yeah. So I just want to throw that in there. It's sort of,
it sounds like we
depends.
might need to do a future part 2 show and focus on scaling, the importance of private equity, recapitalizations, and all those things, and kind of get
I'd
into
love
that.
to, yeah.
Oh,
Lots of
man,
thoughts
that
there.
gets me excited. I love talking about that stuff. So we're working on a big scale project right now. I'm in the middle of it. So when we do our next show, I'll be coming out of that, so we could talk more about it. So we got about 15 more minutes. We're gonna get into the second segment, and then we're gonna go into our rapid fire round, which goes pretty quick. So let's talk about the predictions for the future of tech and its impact on entrepreneurship, specifically through the use of things like we were talking about, blockchain technology. You cut out the middleman, you speed up efficiencies, processes, you lower costs, AI, the big buzzword on the street right now. We use a lot of AI around here where we're automating things that we couldn't automate before, right? So we'll be shifting roles for many workers. I don't think it'll eliminate, well, it is going to eliminate some roles, but a lot of roles will shift. But what types of new businesses will we be seeing on the horizon, Andrew? What types of businesses do you think
such a fun question? Yeah,
these techs are going to spawn? I mean, I'm already seeing it, especially in the cybersecurity world, because we're leveraging a lot of automation with, surface attacks and things like that, scripting and being able to automate using scripting technology and things like that. Tell me what you see, especially from your experience. What do you think you're going to see coming up on the horizon? I mean, what I see with you is tying your apps into things like, Zillow and all these other things that are out there, so we can create a cohesive way of buying and managing real estate and renting, like we talked about before.
Yeah, I'll maybe talk more like zoom out quite a bit, because I think it's worth clarifying. Like, I think hopefully this will be helpful to your listeners in terms of how to think about AI specifically. Okay, so I think fundamentally it's just about acceleration. It's about being able to do more faster, right? And it's not that new in some ways, because I'll give you an example, like just from my life. When we built our first product, so I started a company in 2008, and we were building a mobile phone, and we wanted to build our own mobile operating system in 2008. What did it mean? It meant in 2008, remember all the things that did not exist. AWS was not like really a thing.
Yeah.
We had, 4 Dell servers in our office, and we had to host our own applications, right? In the office space. There was no app store, so you had to we had to beg and plead with Verizon to distribute our app, through some Verizon channel, right? Or I had to have business development conversations with operators. God, when's the last time you thought of going to, Verizon to ask them for permission to launch a service, right? It's crazy, but that's not even that long ago. I mean, we're talking about, 15 years ago, effectively, that this was the case, right? And so what I'm kind of alluding to is the fact that if you had an idea 15 years ago, there were much fewer off-the-shelf parts that you could use in order to make it a reality, right? And so you had to kind of invest, right, dollars and people into building this foundation for whatever product and service you wanted to launch. Fast forward to where we are today, an army of one, like one person can build, host, and distribute an application on the App Store. That is unfathomable.
Amazing.
15 years ago, right? It was, so there's no difference between that and when we talk about like AI accelerating things. It's the same basic thing, right? It's going to be much easier for you to use off-the-shelf parts. I mean, and go back to, great. What's Chat GPT great at? You can ask it to create an investor presentation. Then you can ask it to create all of your outreach and marketing. And then you can actually ask it to create pieces of code that you can copy and paste and basically like build the app entirely using Chat GPT and various other services that are available to you. So my point is like, we're just, again, now before you could host the app in AWS, but you still have to code it. Now you don't have to code it, right? So being able to go from 0 to 1 has never been easier. And I think that is the beautiful thing, right, about what's happening here. Cue thunder.
Yeah.
It has never been possible before for somebody with very little background or no background in marketing, in fundraising, in engineering and design to be, but with a head on their shoulders to actually make their product a reality, and that's going to accelerate. And I think that's the really insane thing. I have this anecdote which just summarizes this perfectly. Do you guys remember that AI generated photo of the Pope walking around in a Montclair jacket? It's like a puffy white jacket. And
You
it's like
remember that,
Pope
Ed?
No.
I don't
Pope
remember
Francis like walking down a cake. Okay. So it was like just when the image generation, AI image generation tools came out like a year ago, which seems like forever ago.
Yeah.
And so the guy, it went this viral photo because it just looked really cool. It was like the Pope, but it's like this puffy down jacket. And it looked like something, you'd see Kanye West produce. And the guy that created that image and created the prompt for that image was, somebody can fact check me on this, but I believe was a plumber from Australia, right? And that to me is just such an iconic moment because it tells you this guy who was plumbing in Australia, right? Like was in the wrong place at the wrong job, to be producing, puffy jackets and popes, created this iconic fashion statement, created this jacket that looked incredibly cool, right? That was like out there. People literally thought it was an actual thing you could buy, right? From like one of the big fashion houses. That to me summarizes the opportunity just perfectly, right? Mm-hmm. You're no longer, and increasingly, you're now no longer going to have to stay in your lane because, I don't have this or that ability, right? All of a sudden, the democratization of like creation tools, right? But it also means you have no excuse, right? Like you could, I have this great idea and the only reason it's not out there is I can't find a guy who code the app. It's like, no. You'll be able to do the app. You'll be able to put it in the app store. There'll be no excuse if you have a good idea by yourself not to make it a reality, not to throw it out there.
Well, it's funny because I remember the evolution, when high-speed internet, started to become a thing and more people were adopting it. It changed everything. It defeated that divide between us and them and everybody, so we could cross over, we could get more access to information more quickly. In my world, it allowed us to go remote, and that was huge for us as far as efficiency. Yesterday, I gave a company-wide meeting through Teams, which we'll talk about that another day. You're anti-Teams. We promote Teams, and we were using, I use Copilot, which, again, you were talking about an OpenAI, Chat GPT, which keeps historical artifacts there. So what happens if that's a whole other show? What happens if that gets hacked, where Copilot is eradicating the information as soon as you're done? I was able to tap into all my data within my ecosystem and build a slideshow around what I was trying to present just by telling
That's
it.
right.
And it literally pulled within the. So let's keep moving because we're very short on time. I'm going to go ahead and get into the last question before we get into our rapid fire round. And just so you know, rapid fire is just simple one-liner questions and answers. So
I'm ready.
what is your advice? So for aspiring entrepreneurs looking to break into the tech industry, now we just talked about it a little bit. The tools are out there. You just got to find the right tools for the right project. You know, my philosophy, find a solution using tech, figure out your audience, who is the audience, and build a strong team to make it happen. Once you begin, don't give up. Never give up. I think an entrepreneur has to have a thick skin. I think some people, I think everyone has it in them. But I think depending on their situations, wherever they are at in life or whatever, they may not be able to reach the finish line where they want to be. Tell me about your advice to aspiring entrepreneurs that might be listening to this show, looking to break into the tech industry. Go.
I mean, honestly, I'll just build on what you said and just add that for the precursor to all of those things you need, don't be afraid. I think people tend to, this is kind of broadly a life thing, right? Like we tend to think of these, I'm at a crossroads, I have to make this binary decision, do this or do that. The truth of the matter is, and I'm just guessing, I'm sure if you look back at your life, this will ring true. Like it sort of doesn't matter what decision you make as long as you make a decision and you move forward.
Good answer.
All change is kind of good change. So, it's not going to be one of those things, I decided to start this company and it didn't work out and I died. Like that's not going to happen. Things kind of evolve. Things will pivot. You'll find yourself in maybe different situations, but they'll all be better.
But don't build something that you don't want to consider running for a while, right?
Build
something you're passionate about.
No, of course, without a doubt, right? I think I'm making an assumption here that people are passionate, but they're afraid. And I think, look, if you're passionate about something, please don't let fear stop you. Awesome. You'll be fine.
What a wonderful, so we're going to get into the rapid fire questions, but I just want to say This has been a very inspiring, fantastic. I've enjoyed our conversation so far. And
Same.
So let's get into, I've got 5 simple rapid fire questions before we wrap up. Are you ready?
I am.
Here we go. Favorite tech gadget?
Favorite tech gadget?
Or it doesn't have to be a gadget. It could be a tool.
Okay, I'm going to sound really like Silicon Valley here, but I love my 8 sleep mattress.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Most valuable business book?
Valuable business book. I don't read business books because I tend to find them. I have this kind of a obnoxious take on it, but I tend to find them. It's sort of like, it's like reading biographies. Like just because you read Churchill's biography, it doesn't make you become Churchill, right? It's at best like an artifact. So I find like that they're a poor predictor of like future performance. But I will say, of the books in business that I've read, I've really enjoyed Patrick Lencioni's, The Advantage.
So on my shelf. I love Pat. Amazing. I saw him speak in down where you are. Well, in Orlando, closer to where you are, but saw him speak down there. Great public speaker, by the way. He's funny. He's funny.
I think 100% of what he preaches is totally right. And I've lived it. And
For me, my life-changing book, E-Myth by Michael Gerber. Have you ever heard of that book?
Oh, no, I'm writing it down right now.
Teaches you how to treat any business like a franchise, even though you're not planning on franchising it, so you can systemize every single process. Because it's all about processes and SOPs, so you can scale, right?
Oh, that's a very interesting approach. That's cool. Okay.
You really, I'm telling you, I'll bet you read that book and you're going to email me going, "Thank you, Tim." That book
It's
is
on my
amazing.
Kindle right now.
All right, good.
Boom.
Listen to it. Yeah. Next question. This is a good one. I love this question because I ask myself this question from time to time. What's one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
Buy real estate.
That's a good one. Mine would have been start being smart and get off your ass.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's the precursor. Hard to buy real estate if you don't get off your ass.
If you could have lunch with any entrepreneur, who would it be and why?
Presumably living.
Could be living or dead. Mine would be probably Steve Jobs. I'm a big Apple fan as well.
Yeah, I mean, what would I talk to him about? Yeah, you gotta have a good. I'm trying to think right now. Is it? No, I'll reach back into history. I think I'll just name something like let's just say Henry Ford. I'll be ambitious
All
here.
right. Good one.
And I will just tie it to what I mentioned before. I mean, talk about building stuff without off-the-shelf parts, right? Like,
Yeah.
well, we have to. I mean, you can build a car company. Like, there's well kind of documented knowledge on how to do that. I mean, this guy, invented the modern factory. Like, where
The assembly
my first
line.
question would be like,
I mean,
how did you know? Like, yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Think about that for a minute. And that, again, that goes down to process and consistent deliverables.
Yeah, totally. It's very, very operational. Yeah.
How do we produce the same exact product every single time?
Yeah. That'd be fascinating.
Automation.
Because right now, all of us, you and I, when we do something today, most of the time we're copying someone else. Who the hell did he copy?
Yeah, exactly. So, and what's the next big thing in tech? Last question.
Next big thing in tech.
That's a hard one.
Speaking.
So, hey, I don't want to put you on the spot.
Well, no. I think the one thing we don't know, and I mean, look, I'll give you somewhat. Maybe it's a cliche answer because, look, I think vast majority of people are underestimating grossly, even with all the hype, are underestimating what AI truly means. Because the piece that's going to be really interesting is we're still not at the point where AI is making AI, and that's inevitable. So I think what's going to be really interesting is this new crop of products and services that are not conceived by humans. That's going to be. I mean, because I just can't fathom what that will be.
It's a little scary at the same time.
Right,
Coming from my world.
At the same time, it's going to happen. But what's crazy about it is we all know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's like this. It's not science fiction. It's going to happen.
So
right?
AI is going to create, robotics and AI. Oh, we've seen that movie.
Well, I love that movie. But by the way, super prescient. Like you can watch the first Terminator movie right now. You're like, they got everything right.
Most tech movies, and this is a whole other show. And actually, we did another show on this. But if you look back at tech movies all the way back, 60s, 70s, 80s, they get a lot of it right. I mean, look, all you got to do is watch the Jetsons.
Well, but I'm actually, it's funny because we're at this golden age of defense tech right now, or at least a resurgence of defense tech in the United States, a space that I absolutely love. So you look at a company like Anduril, right? That's building these completely insane kind of future autonomous weapons. And I mean, they literally look like something out of Terminator. And yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy that all this stuff is actually happening. I wonder where we're going to end up.
We have the privilege of having, I don't know if you've ever heard of IHMC. They're a robotics company. They're actually located here in Pensacola, Florida. And if you ever come up this way, Andrew, I'll get you a tour of the facility. And my son actually just went through the robotics. Oh, they're building some friggin' amazing robotics. So I want to thank you for being on the show. It's been my pleasure to have you on today, and I'm glad we got the glitches worked out ahead of time. Let's take the last minute. Tell our audience about just to remind them about your current projects and any promos you have going on within those products or anything you want to promote right now. Go.
And also where to find you at too.
Oh, and where to find you. Yeah.
Find me physically.
No.
The product name is Rentapp. Very easy. The URL is very easy. It's rents.app, and very easy to get started there and kind of learn more about it. Look, if you're renting, check it out. We help you build credit, completely free. It's super convenient to use. You can use the website, or you can use Android app or iOS app. We think your landlord's going to love it as well. If you're a landlord, if you're collecting rent, I mean, Airbnbs, you're renting out a unit downstairs. If you have a little small portfolio down the street, like, check us out. It's a free, super easy, very convenient way to collect rent. I think everyone's going to love it. Whoever tries it. I'm based in Miami, with my co-founder, and then, the rest of the team is based in New York. So hit me up. I'm Andrew at rent.app. Very easy. I'd love I always love to talk to people, kind of learn, what problems we can potentially solve for them. And I love to meet people in person for a coffee. So if you're in Miami and you want to talk tech, Andrew at rent.app, try our product. Thanks for listening.
Awesome. So again, thanks, Andrew. I want to thank you for coming on the show. Stay tuned, folks. Our next guest was a rising star in Hollywood the same time I was out there, before she became an acting coach for new rising stars. It's going to be a good one. Thanks again for joining us, and remember, stay nerdy. Cheers, my fellow nerds and beer lovers. Stay tuned for more Nerds on Tap. Oh, and one more thing. Help us spread the nerdy love and the love for great brews by sharing this podcast with your friends, colleagues, and fellow beer enthusiasts. Let's build a community that embraces curiosity, innovation, and the enjoyment of a cold one.